In global diplomacy, sometimes the loudest message is silence. Today, that silence echoes across continents, reverberating through the halls of power and the streets of ordinary people. It's a silence that speaks volumes, a pause that leaves the world holding its breath. In moments like these, every unspoken word, every empty chair, and every withheld handshake becomes a message in itself, a signal that something profound is unfolding just beneath the surface. Today, April 22nd, 2026, the world expected peace talks. But instead, we face a chilling quiet. The anticipation was palpable, with diplomats, journalists, and citizens alike waiting for a breakthrough that could change the course of history. Instead, the absence of dialogue has created a vacuum, filled only by uncertainty and anxiety. The world watches as the clock ticks, wondering if this silence is the calm before a storm or the first step toward a new, unpredictable era. The war that began with US and Israeli strikes on Iran has already devastated millions, and a fragile ceasefire was set to expire today. Cities lie in ruins, families are displaced, and hope is in short supply. The world's attention is fixed on the region, where every moment of quiet is haunted by the memories of violence and the fear of what might come next. The stakes could not be higher, as the fate of millions hangs in the balance. The planned talks in Pakistan were seen as the last hope for de-escalation, but Iran's refusal to attend has left the world in suspense. Outside the meeting rooms, reporters and officials wait for news that never comes. Inside, the absence of key players is a stark reminder of how fragile peace can be. The world's leaders, once hopeful for a diplomatic breakthrough, now find themselves grappling with the consequences of missed opportunities and growing mistrust. This silence is not emptiness. It's a calculated signal from Iran and China, reshaping the global order without a word. Behind closed doors, alliances are being tested, and new strategies are being formed. The absence of public statements is itself a form of communication, one that leaves rivals and allies alike guessing at intentions and next moves. In this new era, power is wielded not just through action, but through the deliberate withholding of action. In this standoff, it's the unspoken moves that now shape our future. The world stands at a crossroads, where silence can be as dangerous as words, and every pause is loaded with meaning. As we wait for the next move, we are reminded that in the high-stakes game of global diplomacy, sometimes the most powerful statements are the ones left unsaid. Islamabad was ready for history. Security tight, hopes high, the world watching. The US delegation arrived with a clear demand: Iran must abandon its nuclear program for any hope of sanctions relief. The 2-week ceasefire had offered a glimpse of hope, and the talks were meant to turn that pause into lasting peace. But Iran never showed. The conference room stayed empty, the press reported on absence, not progress. The empty chair became a global symbol of shattered optimism and renewed danger. The silence from Iran was deafening, instantly replacing hope with dread. The world was left to wonder what comes next. Iran's official reason for boycotting the talks was clear: it would not negotiate under US coercion. The ongoing American naval blockade was labeled an act of war, making good-faith negotiations impossible. Iranian leaders insisted the path to talks was open if the US lifted its military pressure. By framing itself as the victim, Iran shifted blame and demanded respect, not capitulation. This was more than a refusal. It was a strategic move to gain leverage and force Washington's hand. Iran's absence became a negotiating tactic, not a rejection of peace. The world knew exactly who Iran blamed for the impasse. For Pakistan, hosting the talks was meant to be a diplomatic triumph. The city of Islamabad was locked down, businesses shuttered, daily life disrupted, all for a chance at peace. When Iran refused to attend, hope turned to disappointment and frustration. The elaborate security and preparations became a monument to a failed effort. Pakistan's reputation as a mediator took a hit, left powerless between two rivals. The empty conference rooms were a stark reminder of the region's volatility. Islamabad's sacrifice became a lesson in the limits of mediation. Iran's refusal was a calculated power play, not a sign of weakness. In the high-stakes world of international diplomacy, Every move is scrutinized, and Tehran's decision to walk away from the negotiating table was a deliberate assertion of its own agency. Rather than appearing desperate or isolated, Iranian leaders sought to demonstrate that they would not be pressured into accepting terms that did not align with their national interests. This was a message not just to the United States, but to the world. Iran would set its own pace, and it would not be dictated to by outside powers. By walking away, Tehran seized control of the diplomatic timeline, signaling it would not be rushed. This maneuver forced other parties to reconsider their strategies, as Iran made it clear that deadlines and ultimatums would not sway its resolve. The move also allowed Iranian officials to regroup and strengthen their internal consensus, ensuring that any future negotiations would be approached from a position of unity and strength. Hardliners, especially the IRGC, now dominate Iran's strategy, sidelining moderates and prioritizing resistance over compromise. The Revolutionary Guard's influence has grown, shaping both foreign and domestic policy. Their rhetoric emphasizes self-reliance, defiance, and a willingness to endure hardship rather than submit to foreign pressure. This shift has marginalized voices, advocating for engagement and reform, consolidating power among those who view confrontation as a means to safeguard Iran's sovereignty. Iran is betting that the global economic pain from the closed Strait of Hormuz will pressure the U.S. to concede. The strategic waterway is a lifeline for the world's oil supply, and any disruption sends shockwaves through global markets. By threatening to restrict access, Iran wields a powerful tool of leverage, reminding adversaries that its actions have far-reaching consequences. This tactic is risky, but it underscores Tehran's willingness to use every asset at its disposal. This high-risk strategy projects strength at home, rallying national pride, and consolidating the regime's support. Public displays of unity and defiance are carefully orchestrated to reinforce the narrative that Iran stands strong against external threats. The government leverages these moments to foster a sense of collective purpose, portraying itself as the guardian of national dignity and independence. The empty chair was as much for domestic audiences as for Washington. It symbolized Iran's refusal to be sidelined or coerced, serving as a powerful image for both its citizens and its adversaries. For many Iranians, it was a reminder that their leaders would not compromise on core principles, even in the face of intense international pressure. Iran's message, clear and unwavering, is that it will not bow to American demands. The leadership's public statements and orchestrated rallies reinforce this stance, projecting an image of resilience and steadfastness. This narrative is carefully crafted to maintain domestic morale and deter foreign intervention. The standoff is a performance of defiance and leverage, played out on the world stage. Each side maneuvers for advantage, aware that every gesture and statement is amplified by global media. For Iran, this is not just about immediate gains, but about shaping perceptions, asserting sovereignty, and demonstrating that it remains a formidable player in the international arena. The U.S. naval blockade was designed as a show of force, a calculated move to pressure Iran into compliance with international demands. American warships patrolled the Persian Gulf, their presence unmistakable, a signal to both allies and adversaries that the United States was willing to use its military might to protect its interests and maintain the flow of oil through one of the world's most critical waterways. But this strategy, intended to isolate Iran and force diplomatic concessions, quickly produced unintended consequences. Iran, feeling cornered and threatened, retaliated by closing the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply travels every day. The move was bold, risky, and immediately effective. Within hours, maritime traffic ground to a halt, and the world watched as a regional standoff escalated into a global crisis. Oil tankers, some carrying millions of barrels of crude, were stranded on both sides of the strait. The global oil market reacted instantly. Prices spiked to levels not seen in decades, sending shockwaves through economies already struggling with inflation and uncertainty. Energy-dependent nations scrambled to secure alternative supplies, but the sheer volume of oil trapped in the Gulf made quick solutions impossible. In response, the U.S. escalated its efforts, seizing Iranian oil tankers suspected of violating sanctions. Even a Chinese-flagged vessel was detained, drawing Beijing into the fray and raising the stakes for international diplomacy. Each seizure was broadcast around the world, fueling Iran's narrative that the United States was acting as an aggressor, not a peacekeeper. What began as a calculated pressure campaign had now become a dangerous standoff. The blockade, meant to force Iran's hand, instead hardened positions on both sides. Tensions flared as US and Iranian vessels faced off in the narrow waters, each maneuvering for advantage, each risking a miscalculation that could ignite open conflict. Around the world, leaders gathered in emergency summits, weighing their options. Military strategists pored over maps of the strait, calculating the risks of intervention. News outlets blared headlines warning of the possibility of war, while diplomats struggled to find a path back to negotiation. The world now faced a stark choice: risk a wider conflict to reopen the strait, or make painful concessions to Iran in hopes of restoring stability. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has effectively shut down the world's vital energy artery. Pipelines and storage tanks sit empty, infrastructure grinds to a halt, and the global economy teeters on the edge. The stakes have never been higher, as every passing day without resolution deepens the crisis and increases the risk of irreversible damage. With negotiations stalled and the blockade firmly in place, the door to peaceful resolution has slammed shut, for now. The world holds its breath, waiting to see who will blink first, and what price will be paid to reopen the most important waterway in global energy. As the US and Iran clash, China remains strategically silent. Beijing's only statement, a call for de-escalation, masking deeper calculations. China's main interest is economic stability and secure oil supplies, but it avoids direct confrontation with the US. By staying neutral, China protects its interests and observes how the crisis unfolds. This is a real-time lesson in American power and global strategy. China's silence is a shield, keeping its options open for mediation or influence. Inaction is China's policy, waiting, watching, and preparing for its own advantage. The world's other superpower is playing the long game. The failed talks and closed strait have sent shockwaves through global markets and daily life. Oil prices have surged, straining households and businesses worldwide. Financial markets are volatile, investment is frozen, and economic growth is threatened. The crisis tests American influence and exposes the fragility of global order. China and Russia maneuver cautiously, signaling a shift to a multipolar world. The human cost is immense, millions displaced, lives upended, and fear of wider war growing. The empty chair in Islamabad amplified global anxiety. The world holds its breath, uncertain of what comes next. Sometimes, the most powerful messages in geopolitics are unspoken. Iran's empty chair was a declaration of defiance, not a failure of diplomacy. By closing the Strait of Hormuz, Iran showed its leverage and its willingness to endure pain for strategic gain. China's silence is equally telling, signaling a new era of multipolar power and strategic patience. The world stands at a crossroads with more questions than answers. In this dangerous dance, silence and absence speak louder than words.